bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50-plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Let's go. Go. It is a football Friday. There won't be any football played, but it'll be talked about for the next 2 hours right here on Bird 365 with your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. And we've got almost 2 hours to shoot the breeze about the Birds and a lot of things in the world of football. But I got to start here, Johnny Mac. Kind of a weird thing. About 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, this past morning, I realized I woke up, I was having a dream that Aaron Rodgers had signed with the New York Jets. And I didn't know where this friggin' dream was coming from. But it was almost so real that I had to turn on the TV in my bedroom to see if I could get a re-air of SportsCenter, because I figured it'd be the top story, it'd be on the crawl or whatever else. And sure enough, we just punched up our log in to do today's show. And the first commenter on our screener says, did the Jets acquire an Aaron Rodgers yet? Eagles
maybe he had the same dream. Well, it's going to happen. So that's probably where it came from. It's not exactly off the wall.
Right, but it was real. He was already a Jet in my dream, and it hasn't officially happened yet. But yeah, there are a lot of signs pointing to it happening, including, did you see the thing from Sauce Gardner yesterday?
Yeah, I don't know how much Sauce is involved with.
You don't think the Jets are whispering in his ear what they're planning on doing? He's tied in, and he sure as hell. He's a confident young man. Yeah, when he talks with the way he plays,
I'm not sure Joe Douglas is running things by him, but
fighting in Sauce, you're not sure. But he yesterday said, for those of you who don't know, he did say, "Don't be surprised when we get Aaron Rodgers if it's not a package deal." Meaning they're going to bring a whole bunch of his Green Bay cohorts along.
Well, I'm not sure that part of it's good, because if you're bringing Randall Cobb over and Robert Tonyan, two of Rodgers' favorites, probably not a good thing. I don't know. David Bakhtiari, is he a free agent? I don't know. But he's a really good player, yeah. But he's not healthy. He hasn't been healthy in like 2 seasons. But I guess that's worth a flyer. Who's the Jets left tackle? Can't think of it.
Big guy who's always hurt there. First round.
Yeah. That's a tough decision.
Mekhi Becton.
Yeah,
he looks good sitting on the sidelines. I got to tell you, Mekhi looks like a football player. He's almost never in a football uniform, but he looks like a football player. You got
that's sort of the comment. You want the young guys always hurt or the old guys always hurt, but the old guys done it. So.
Really weird. I woke up at 4 o'clock and I'm looking for the damn remote control in the bed. Let me get SportsCenter on here. Maybe it happened. Maybe we're talking about it on Monday. No, but we're here to talk about the Eagles more than anything else. And there was some quote-unquote breaking news yesterday, John. Do you want to talk the Eagles roster move or the Eagles coaching move first?
I guess coaching, because it's, I think people were excited that it wasn't Matt Patricia as the new linebackers coach. I think, for whatever reason, well, we know why, but, you got an unknown, former Temple defensive coordinator only for one season, and Temple wasn't very good last year. He's never been a pro coach before. And we'll see. We'll see how it works out. He's got some history with some of the Eagles players, not the meaningful ones. Kyron Johnson, he was out in Kansas with Kyron. He was out in Colorado with Davion Taylor. So we'll see. I mean, he's got more experience than Nick Rollis, and everyone seemed to like Nick. So you can look at it, but kind of an unknown.
Been coaching on a major college level for close to a decade now. So it's not like he's coming in wet behind the ears, but as you correctly pointed out, 0 NFL head coaching ability, but the Eagles believe they can develop a guy like this. But they do now have serious Temple ties since they took the Temple defensive coordinator and former Temple Masters graduate as their new defensive coordinator. I guess that's where you go to when you're trying to build a program. You want to steal from the Temple Owls. You want to dip into that Temple Owl gridiron pool. Matt Rule did get a job this offseason, right? He's going to be like Nebraska's new head coach. He's not available.
Yeah,
okay,
maybe. And, people have kind of speculated that. Well, Sean, was out of Temple long before DJ Elliott got there. So, I don't know if there's any other than, Temple pride. I don't know if there's any connection there. Hey, it's not Matt Patricia, so everybody's happy. That's about all you can say. Now, it'll be interesting. He's been a defensive coordinator at the college level for a pretty significant period over, a number of different schools. But he's also kept his foot. He played linebacker at Wyoming. He's kept his foot. He also, at the college level, you got to do two things, really. You got to be the coordinator, plus you got to coach a position. So he's always kept the linebackers. So he's got a lot of experience, and we'll see who he's working with. I mean, number one, I would think the first part of that job is get Nakobe Dean up and running. And we'll see. We'll see if he can do it.
The one thing that I found interesting, he's a young guy, relatively young guy, even though inexperienced on the NFL level, had some success. Certainly be willing to give him a chance. But the thing that jumped out at me, that surprised me, was he's like a known 3-4 guy that they bent over backwards to keep certain tenets in place of this defense, even with the changing in the coaching staff that's been there, with the Fangio philosophy, if I can use that phrase. The Fangio philosophy is not 3-4. It's more 5-2 than it is 3-4. And the Eagles this past year had an outside linebackers coach and an inside linebackers coach. They had an edge coach, which, if you want to consider Hassan Reddick a linebacker. I know that always gets John fired. He's not a friggin' line. Stop calling him a linebacker.
Well, you know why I say that, Jody? Because, and I blame the NFL. And if I become NFL commissioner, nobody's called me yet, but if I become NFL commissioner, I'm going to make people label things correctly, because I really do think it fails to advance the talk. And I think people, how many times you hear 4-3, 3-4? Is it 4-3 guys at 3? Nobody plays that in the NFL today. Nobody. There's never 3 linebackers on the stinking field. There
aren't even, and in a 3-4, you would be stating there are 4 linebackers on the field. And you're right. Yeah. There aren't even 3 anymore. It's 2. It's 2 linebackers on almost every single play.
It's just so frustrating. And then, when you have an edge rusher like us, it's funny because it hurts from a contract standpoint as well. You have these the Travis Kelce's of the world, who's really more of a receiver than a tight end. So when you start talking contracts, well, receivers get paid more than tight ends. Well, Travis Kelce's one of the best receivers in football. Whatever you want to label him as, he's one of the best receivers in football. He's going to the Hall of Fame because of his receiving ability. But, the label is not, it's incorrect, or at least it's not full. And when you talk about same thing with Hassan Reddick, well, you better damn well be labeled a defensive end over or an outside or an edge rusher or an outside linebacker than an off-ball linebacker, because one gets paid and one doesn't. So it hurts on so many levels, and they just won't stop it. And what really gets me, you got me going, you got me grinding my gears. What really gets me is when media people do. I'm like, come on, you know better than that. Don't call freaking Hassan Reddick a linebacker. Stop it. It just creates disinformation, misinformation.
It's you get more absolutely worked up about this than me. I think it's kind of, well, maybe I assume incorrectly that people understand that linebacker, edge rusher, you just know what Hassan Reddick is, and how it's labeled becomes rather irrelevant. But if you do get put off by
well,
that,
the reason why.
So
Jody,
here's my question to you: do you think DJ Elliott will be coaching Hassan Reddick?
No, Jeremiah Washburn is still here. He's going to be the off-ball linebacker coach. So he's the TJ Nakobe Kaiser White coach. Jeremiah Washburn's still here. Now, they haven't fully announced their coaching staff, but there's no evidence he's going to be fired. So he's been here over multiple coaching staffs. So he did a tremendous job. I wouldn't imagine they're getting rid of him for that. So no would be my quick answer.
So that's why him being a 3-4 linebacker devotee during his college defensive coordinator days doesn't really seem to fit with what he's going to be asked to do here for the Eagles. But if they like the guy, they think he's a good coach, think he's a good motivator, think he works well with players. If when they had the meeting, Sirianni explained, and probably Desai sat in on the meeting too, this is what we want our defense to look like. This is what I'm going to ask you to do with your linebacker. He probably said, okay, works for me. And that's why he got the gig, because it became no, here are my ways of running it. No, you're the linebackers coach. You're not coming in to step on the new defensive coordinator's toes. I just thought that was the most interesting aspect of the new hire, that the type of defenses he've been playing don't exactly line up with what the Eagles did last year and what we assume they're going to do going forward next year under their new DC. All right, and there was a release of a player yesterday. And I got to tell you, John, I was surprised by it. Am I like, oh, my God, what are the Eagles thinking? Of course not, because Brett Tott, much like Mekhi Becton, may look like a football player, but you don't see him in a football uniform often enough on the PUP list all year long. Has had injury issues since he became an Eagle. They decided to sever ties and part ways with him yesterday. You've got a better read on this than me, because you're down there, you're around the coaches, you see these guys. I always thought that they liked Tott, and that they thought of Tott as a worthwhile project, that he could, when he got healthy enough, get on the field and actually potentially contribute to the Eagles. Timing of this, why do you think it came down now?
New league year. I lost you a little bit. I don't know if it's me or you, Jody, but I think you asked about the timing.
Yep.
And I would say, the new league year starts. It's, it's $1 million, a little bit over $1 million. You're talking about a guy. And I always said about Brett, it's like, all right, let me talk to the doctors, which I'm not allowed to, because they did like at one point. They were very upset when they lost him. Remember, he was an Army player in college. It was a big deal at the time when the Trump administration sort of changed the rule and allowed him to go play professional football. And the Eagles were really excited. They knew he was a project. One, he was in the Army, lost weight to do his job there, and he needed to gain some of that weight back. So they knew he was going to be somewhat of a project. And all of a sudden they waive him. They plan to get him on the practice squad as that happens. Arizona plucked him off waivers, and they had him for a year, and the Eagles went and got him back. So they did like him. He's got tremendous versatility too. He's a natural tackle, played left tackle, played right. He got hurt in week 18 of 2021, if you remember, playing center. You know, Jason Kelsey took the first snap for the meaningless Week 18 game to keep his streak alive, and then Brett Toth went in and played the whole game at center till he got hurt, tore his ACL, and wasn't able to make it back. So to me, it was always about, you know, how healthy he is. And even that $1.1 million, whatever he was supposed to make this coming up season, you know, if you're going to be a deep reserve, yeah, they're probably trying to save a couple bucks. They restructured Jake Elliott this morning, you know, who makes a little bit, you know, only makes a little bit in the large scheme of things, but every dollar counts when you're up against it, and it's not in the plans. And that injury really hurt Brett Toth. It really did.
And we've seen it before with the Eagles, with Toth himself, becomes an ex-Eagle, then comes back and becomes an Eagle again, maybe at a future date, maybe at a lesser dollar figure. I don't know if they didn't like his work ethic trying to get back on the field this year, if that had anything to do with it. Your speculation on it's a money thing and nothing more than that is probably more on point. But we may not have seen the last of Brett Toth, but we have for now, which did come as a little bit of a surprise. You mentioned the Jake Elliott renegotiation. Just one other note, and then we're going to get our first guest up here. A new guy. We haven't had Brian Cameron, the Eagles editor for PhillySportsNetwork.com. Looking forward to talking to him. The whole Matt Patricia isn't going to be the Eagles linebacker coach thing. Darius Slay is not going anywhere. I know people have tried to put 2 and 2 together and come up with 5 that, you know, they could trade Darius Slay and then they could re-sign James Bradbury if they wanted to move away from Slay, who had a less than stellar second half of the year. He's much better in the first half than he was in the second half. He is a guy who likes to stir the pot, and that might not be the Eagles' favorite part of Darius Slay's game. He's not going anywhere. He's got a $21 million dead cap hit if they trade him or cut him. It is a much more likely proposition that Darius Slay is going to get a contract extension because he's got a big cap hit this year on the final year of his deal. They're going to want to try and reduce that, which is going to equate to an extension, not a release, not a trade. I know people have attempted to, probably who don't understand the salary cap well enough, come up with a scenario where Darius Slay becomes an ex-Eagle. That's not happening, Johnny Mac. Darius Slay is going to be here this year.
No, he's going to be here. And Darius is like, I like to compare Darius and CJ because they're both, in the conversation. You can throw Brandon Graham in there as well because they both have these huge personalities, all three of them. But there's difference with Brandon and Slay as well. They're leaders. I mean, they're leaders. They're team captains. I remember when Devin Allen got here and he was still doing the track stuff in the off season. And one of the Eagles staff told me, like, it was Slay who got the team together. They barely knew Devin Allen at the time, just got there, hadn't even been doing anything because he had been working on his track career. Didn't really get here till training camp. And he took them all down to watch him at the Penn relays just to get him involved with the team and embrace him as part of the team. And then you fast forward to training camp and Slay was really excited. The players vote on that team captain thing. It's not the coaching staff. At times, Doug did it one year, the pandemic year, just named captains. But Nick, since he's gotten here, it's the players who vote for the captains, and they voted for Slay as a captain. And then the second part is, and this is like AJ Brown as well. As good as, I'm not gross when it comes to Bradbury, right? I mean, I think he's a tremendous, tremendous player. But there is a difference between being the cornerback 1 and the cornerback 2. And Slay is one of the best cornerbacks in football. Slay is one of the few legitimate number 1 cornerbacks. I always like to say they're like starting pitchers in baseball. Well, you got to have 30 number 1s, but there aren't 30 number 1s. There are legit number 1s, and there are ones that are number 1s because they have to be defined. They're the best pitcher on that particular team. Slay is a legit cornerback number one. And then when Bradbury fits in as the second corner, he's phenomenal. It's a perfect spot for him. Same thing with Devontae Smith. And we saw it in real time. Now, Devontae would have gotten better because he was a rookie player in his second season, even if A.J. Brown wouldn't have gotten here. But he's not A.J. Brown. And he's a great number two. He'd be a good number one, but he wouldn't be A.J. Brown. There's more to it when the other team is trying to do different things and trying to work again because they understand what you are as a player. Slay's a big time player.
Yeah, but would you admit that Bradbury had the better year of the two? Career up to that point, put aside, just who was better, and you can decide how you think the other teams attacked them over the course of the year. By the end of the year, I'm telling you, they're not throwing away from Darius Slay. They were throwing away from Bradbury more than Slay.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Second team All-Pro. Bradbury had the better year.
That's my point.
But part of that is because, and Bradbury will be the first to tell you this, part of that is because he gets to play in the opposite Slay. And that's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, Devontae Smith I heard people at the end of the year, my buddy Ed Kratz said it, Devontae's better than AJ. I heard that from people, not a lot, not as many, not a lot, but I heard that from people. I said, no, he's not. He's a really good player. And people take that as an insult. He's a really good player. He's not AJ Brown. Same thing with Bradbury. Really good player. He's not Darius Slay. And if he was in that cornerback one role, it would be a lot more difficult for him. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. You and I kind of disagree on the cornerbacks. We see the wide receivers the same. Sorry, AJ Brown is just better at this point. He had a better career than Devontae Smith, and he had a better season than Devontae Smith. Darius Slay's had a better career than James Bradbury. James Bradbury had a better year this year. He was on the field, the Eagles quarterback one. So I guess, you and I look at it a little bit differently. Hey, we'll try and get a third point of view on this. So we're hoping to punch up Brian Cameron, who is the PhillySportsNetwork.com Eagles managing editor. We've never had Brian on the show before. Looking forward to talking to him next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Jeff D'Ambrosio doesn't need a special event to appreciate his customers. Jeff shows his appreciation to them every day of the year. Jeff makes sure to stock more new inventory than anyone and guarantees prices and payments that nobody can beat. There are so many reasons that thousands of customers know Jeff is the easy, friendly place to do business. More for their trades, no judgment zone for credit issues, the best, most reliable service department in the country. That's why I like Jeff, and I know you will too. Jeff will satisfy you every day. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Owner Appreciation Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather, the team you trust.
The Mac Morning here on Birds 365, and we welcome in a newbie. We've never had the pleasure of talking to Brian Cameron, managing editor of Eagles content on PhillySportsNetwork.com. Brian, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning. How you guys feeling today?
We're doing good.
Well. Thanks for joining us, Brian. So I guess we'll start out since the Eagles named a new linebackers coach. I think everybody breathed a sigh of relief, but it seemed like Eagles fans weren't happy about potentially Matt Patricia coming here. It's going to be DJ Elliott, not as well known, but locally was the defensive coordinator at Temple, which Temple was not great last year, but I don't know if that was DJ's fault. What do you make of the move and just the coaching staff and the lack of continuity in the movement away from some pretty significant pieces?
I'm actually a big fan of the move. I mean, you said it right off the bat. It's a sigh of relief, right? You know, last year Eagles fans were panicking about the thought of not last year, 2 years ago they were panicking at the thought of Josh McDaniels, and now comes in Matt Patricia, who, hey, Darius Slay is very beloved in Philadelphia, right? We know the history between Patricia and Slay, so I think that was a cause of a concern because it was kind of like, you know, it's one or the other. It's Patricia or Slay. Now, you know, it feels like, you know, the Eagles are actually doing something where they're sticking to their culture, they're sticking to what's working for them. As far as Elliott, not so much on his background, but what I do know is that he's actually an expert in a 3-4 defense, which actually aligns with everything that Sean Desai is rumored to be bringing to Philly. I'm a big fan of what's going on the defensive side. From last year to seeing Jonathan Gannon, to seeing the possibility of what we could get from Sean Desai, it feels like Eagles fans will actually be in a good place defensively. I think the only cause for concern right now is getting the right pieces in defense going forward.
Now, wait a second. You know Eagles fans. I think said Eagle fans are in a good place. They'll be in a good place with Sean Desai for about 20 minutes. And the first quarter of the first game, when he doesn't blitz once, Eagle fans are going to turn on him in a heartbeat because they certainly, despite the fact that his defense put up more sacks than any Eagle defense in history, he still wasn't aggressive enough in the eyes of most Eagles fans. And Sean Desai blitzes less than Jonathan Gannon does. How long do you think this quote-unquote love affair is going to last?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I think got to credit Eagles fans a little bit, right? You know, we had a bit of patience with Jonathan Gannon over the last couple of years. I think that the make or break thing with Gannon and Desai, if you actually look at Desai's track record, going back to when the Bears faced the Ravens, you said it, Desai doesn't blitz much. But against the Ravens, he actually blitzed over 68% against Lamar Jackson, and I think it was Huntley at the time. So it shows that this guy is, you know, willing to adjust on the fly, willing to look at what's not working for him and actually improve on that. And that's something that we didn't see so much of Jonathan Gannon. We saw, you know, him sticking to what it was. People, you know that they brought Vic Fangio to be a consultant, but at the same time, if I'm telling you to, you know, if I'm consulting you, I'm telling you, you know, this is what could work, this is what can't work. At the end of the day, if I'm defensive coordinator, I'm running things my way, and I feel like that's what we saw a lot from Jonathan Gannon.
Well, it was interesting, the big thing, and obviously, you know, Vic is omnipresent over the Eagles and the entire NFL, really, because so many teams run his scheme right now, and he, by the way, isn't happy about that. He mentioned that when he got the job in Miami. For people that don't know, he was brought in as a consultant to help the offense for the Super Bowl. Marcus Brady, who the former Colts offensive coordinator, was helping the defense, and the Eagles sort of switched it up. And basically, they were just saying, hey, you know, if you're an offense, how are you going at my defense in this look and vice versa? So Vic wasn't really helping Jonathan Gannon. So, blame him for the bad stuff, give him credit for the good stuff. Number 2 defense overall. Here's my problem, Brian. If number 2 defense isn't good enough, if number 1 passing defense overall isn't good enough, if 70 sacks, the most in franchise history, far more than my buddy Seth Joyner and anybody else got in the history of this team with Jim Johnson and Buddy Ryan, if that's not good enough, aren't we setting up Sean Desai for failure?
I think to a certain extent, I do agree with that. Coming in again, it's the patience factor, and like Jody mentioned, Eagles fans are not the most patient, but I feel like after seeing what that Gannon has gone through, and understanding that in this league, you can't have great continuity if you're going to be a contender. At the end of the day, I mean, the Bills are losing a lot of players. The Chiefs lost a lot of players a year ago, and the Eagles are in that position right now where they have continuity on the offensive side, but defensively, it's a big question mark, right? But at the end of the day, it's things to build on, in my opinion, at least. They have a great defensive line. They have Hassan Reddick coming back. They have Josh Sweat. The rumors of Brandon Graham coming back. Jordan Davis is going to have himself a year where he's actually the focal point, whether he's lined up against with Fletcher Cox or Milton Williams or a rookie. Patience is going to be key, and I do agree it is setting the side up a little bit for failure. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's a resilient franchise, right? It's all about resiliency in the culture. We saw what Nick Sirianni went through in his first season, how he was ridiculed from his first press conference, even to all the way to the Garden Talk. And now a year later, they were in the Super Bowl. This team is going to contend just for the fact that they have an overpowering offense, in my opinion. But defensively, yes, you're right. They are setting them up for failure. But at the same time, you just don't know what's going to be delivered when you have a Hassan Reddick who just was masterful last season, who's only going to get better. You have, again, Jordan Davis, who's only going to get better, Josh Sweat, and things of that sort.
All right. I need an opinion from you on the interior offensive line, because my partner, Johnny Mack, continues to make this theory about how the Eagles might handle their offensive line in free agency this offseason, which I think he's well-founded in. If Jason Kelsey's coming back, it's going to be very difficult to keep Isaac Seumalo. If Jason Kelsey decides to retire, then the Eagles will make a more concerted effort to keep Isaac Seumalo. I was listening to my radio station WIP yesterday, and Joe Giglio was taking a stance that it'd be better for the Eagles if Jason Kelsey walked away, because then they could use the 14,
By the way,
15.
can you slap Joe for me?
If I could have done it through my radio, I would have tried. But his line of logic was, that's $14 million you can spend on the defense instead to keep all these defensive guys we're going to lose. Oh, so you're going to lose both Kelsey and Isaac. Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. But the main thing is Kelsey's got to make a decision here in the next 3 days. He told the Eagles he'd do so before free agency kicked in. Give us your crystal ball and what you think would be best for the Eagles. Jason Kelsey back for 2023.
I think what's best for the Eagles is Jason Kelsey and putting that 62 jersey no matter what. I mean, definitely the best center in the NFL. I think best case scenario, he is back. And the great thing that I saw, and maybe John, you could attest to this, was Cam Jurgens saying, hey, I could play right guard if Jason comes back for another year. Like, I don't mind it. And that speaks volumes to Jeff Stoutland. I mean, probably the best offensive line coach in all the NFL. His guys are versatile. His guys are plug and play. They can do whatever is asked of them. And I think if Jason does come back, I'm not too worried about Seumalo. I think Cam Jurgens is a stud from what we saw last year in his little glimpses. And it's Stoutland at the end of the day. Like, if you're gonna have anything confident to say about the Eagles, it's gonna be about Jeff Stoutland.
Yeah, I going back to Joe's point, Joe does a great job. I'm only joking. He can have his opinions, but I go back to Sam Hinkie again when I hear stuff like this. You got a first ballot Hall of Fame player. Don't worry about the damn future. Worry about the future when the future is there. Take advantage of the first ballot Hall of Fame player, because I'm with you, Brian. I think Cam Jurgens is going to be a good NFL player. It's probably not going to be Jason Kelsey. I mean, that's kind of unfair to expect anybody. And I just don't get this philosophy of, well, he's going to retire. He's only got a year left. Milk it. he had his best season, which is amazing at his age, and he was able to stay healthy. I get it. He's not going to be here long term. You'd like to roll things over perfectly, but you can't always do that. You got to take advantage of your best players for as long as they're playing the way Jason Kelce is playing. Boy, Jason, if he wants to keep going too, if he keeps playing at this level, do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
Add another episode of the podcast. Do whatever you need. Be as happy as possible. I don't get it. Why do you think fans go down that route so much? Always worried about the future, especially when you're this close to winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm not too sure why people dig into that. I have a theory was kind of like, for example, free agency, people are spending the Eagles' money without having the Eagles' money. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, the cap space is the cap space. Howie always finds a way around it. A lot of things can happen. For all we know, Howie could pull off the move of the century, and that player ends up restructuring their contract. I don't know why people go down that road. Let tomorrow's worries come tomorrow. Let today be today. At the end of the day, and Jason Kelce, like you said, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, if he wants to play, I'm giving him whatever he wants to play under the year.
All right, I'm going to mention a website that I know both you guys know quite well. It's pretty good for guys in the industry like us. That would be Spotrac, which is a NFL cap analyst and data collector for contracts for all the players around the team, league, and teams. They came out with what they are speculating Jalen Hurts' contract extension is going to look like yesterday. First time they've done it on Jalen. And they slotted him in at 6 years, 263. This is how you can tell that it's done with a theorem. 263,190, 190,216 $190,216. So yeah, they're doing some adding and subtracting there. Okay. And that would come out to an annual average value of 43.8 and change. And they do not give a percentage of how much they think the money will be guaranteed. And ask Lamar Jackson how important that is. That's the reason why he's got a franchise tag on his rear end right now, because he's fighting for every last guaranteed dollar. So they don't even go there. I got bad news, Eagle fans. I think this is short. I think Jalen Hurts is getting more than this. I'll quickly repeat it: $263 million and change for 6 years with an average annual value of $43,865.
Yeah, I think that's low.
I think you get more than that.
Yeah.
You, Brian?
I think they're selling him extremely short. We saw him go toe to toe with the best quarterback in the league in the Super Bowl on the highest stage. Jalen Hurts is gonna be, in my opinion, at least the $48 to $50 annual mark. I feel like there's nothing less you can give him. But the issue at hand is they had to make it work for their cap space, right? They had to find some workaround where it alleviates the cap space going forward. And he's 24 years old. There's no way he's going to settle for less than $300 million if I'm Jalen Hurts, at least. I mean, runner-up for MVP, arguably should have been the MVP. Arguably should have been the Super Bowl MVP, even though they lost. I mean, the kid's a stud.
Yeah. He is. He's going to get his money. It's going to be interesting to see how quickly it goes, because the Eagles have this history of wanting to get things done. They know what's coming down the road. When Joe Burrow eventually signs Justin Herbert, it's only going up. So they'll try to get it done as quickly as possible. That, to me, is the biggest question. It's going to get done. It's just a matter of when and how quickly they can get it done.
Are you surprised that it's not done yet?
No, because everybody. Joe Banner, unfortunately, went on the Rich Eisen show and recommended Jalen Waits. And I think his agents know that. They want to see Joe Burrow. The problem is Cincinnati's not going to go quickly. The Chargers aren't going to go quickly. So those two organizations are going to be loggerheads who can get it done first. And how patient can Jalen Hurts be? We'll see. I mean, a lot of money. He hasn't made a lot of money. He just made $1 million. He's scheduled. I mean, that's a lot for us, but it's not a lot for an NFL player. So that big number is going to be very enticing for him as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Now, other free agents are leaving. Howie Roseman has been very above board for people paying attention. The Eagles are going to lose players. They're going to lose significant players. They're going to have 2024 compensatory picks because they lose players. Brian, if I gave you 2 players that you had to have back, which 2 are you going for free agency wise?
Definitely Javon Hargrave. I think he was, he had a coming out party a bit last season. And then I'm on the fence about this next one, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I know he's a fan favorite. I know people, love the idea of the energy he brings to Philly, which is great. He was phenomenal for us. But if you paid attention, Chauncey's actually trying to break the bank for his role, for his hybrid role. In New Orleans, he wanted to break the bank for a nickel cornerback. Came to Philly, switched positions to drive up his market. The likelihood of him staying, I think, is kind of slimmer than we think. But it would definitely be CJ and Javon, in my opinion.
Those would be the 2 most talented. I would agree with you there. Back to the quarterback for a second. Everybody wants to know how signings affect Jalen Hurts. Like when Derek Carr signed, did it have effect on Jalen Hurts? Not really. When Daniel Jones signed the other day, other than the fact they're going to play twice a year every year, and I think the Giants kind of overpaid him at $82 million guaranteed for the first 2 years, it doesn't really affect Jalen Hurts. Burrow would. Herbert Wood. The guy who's gonna is Lamar Jackson, because that's immediate. He's already hitting the free agent market. Those 2 other guys have time to wait before they hit the 5th year of their contract. So neither one of those 2 teams, and neither one of them is chock full of money, are like uber motivated to get it done tomorrow. So if the Eagles are going to have to wait because Jalen says, I want to wait till these other 2 guys sign, the only one who's really going to move the needle at all on Jalen's deal is Lamar Jackson. So he's now a free agent. He can negotiate with any team. We've all read the reports on he's looking to get every dollar guaranteed like Deshaun Watson. How's Lamar Jackson's free agency going to play out there, Brian?
It's tough to say, right? I mean, you have all these random public statements that these teams are not in the running for Lamar, but I have a feeling that one team is going to come out the woodworks out of spite to sign Lamar and get him the money he wants, just because, like, there's and I hate to use it as an example. For example, like the Commanders, right? Snyder's on his way out. If I'm pissed off at the owners, if I'm pissed off at the NFL, what am I going to do? I'm going to break the bank of Lamar Jackson and just piss off everybody even more.
That's a good point. That would be a nice FU out the door for Daniel.
Yeah, that would be wild. Other than that, it's hard to say. Like, I mean, you have teams that don't want to give up 2 first-round picks in order to sign Lamar, but at the end of the day, a guy like Lamar is worth more than 2 first-round picks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we
that
see
wouldn't I wouldn't even hesitate.
Yeah,
2 first-round picks.
But the Deshaun Watson deal just it screwed up everybody, right? And all that guaranteed money and the way they maneuvered it, it's going to have ripple effects on Lamar Jackson, which is going to have ripple effects on Jalen. I think Jalen and Eagles are waiting to see what the guaranteed money is going to look like.
Yeah, definitely. No one in the NFL is happy with the Deshaun Watson contract and the fully guaranteed nature of it. And that's the biggest issue. And we'll see if Lamar can get it from somebody. I think it's going to be really, really difficult to get that deal. Now, if he goes short term like Kirk Cousins, maybe it's a little bit more realistic. So it's going to be one of the more interesting offseason storylines. Last one from me, Brian, and follow Brian on Twitter at BCameronPSN. Eagles managing editor for the Philly Sports Network there, does stuff for the Pro Football Hall of Fame as well. So you're going to be doing stuff on Jason Kelsey and probably Lane Johnson down the road. I think he's a Hall of Fame player. Fletch is going to be interesting. I'll end it there with Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. We were talking yesterday on the show about paying for past performance versus paying for, what's coming up. Obviously, they're not the players they once were, but they've meant so much to this organization. How do you toe that line if you're Howie Roseman? They're still good players. Fletcher had a bounce back season. Brandon had a great season. in a more limited role. But, you know, we talked about it with Jason Kelsey. I mean, there's people want to move on from Jason Kelsey, still playing at an all-pro level. So,
Yeah.
how do you justify bringing Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham back if it's not a really team-friendly, cost-effective deal?
They're both at needed positions. I mean, our edge depth is not there to begin with. If you lose Javon Hargrave, our defensive tackle depth is not there to begin with. In a year where you want Jordan Davis to actually, you know, explode, actually to come on the scene and break out, you need a guy like Fletcher Cox around him, where he's actually, you know, right next to him, helping him deliver the pressure. Brandon Graham, I feel like, is more needed than Fletcher Cox, just because edge, you know, it's such a huge question mark going forward. You know, who's behind Hassan, who's behind Josh, but also Brandon Graham's leadership, I feel like, is second to none. Like, he took on a role this year where, yeah, he was limited and he was exploding, but he was really the voice of that defensive line, which was phenomenal to see. And why not have one of these guys, you know, finish their year finish their career as an Eagle? I mean, I think we're due for that in this case. We lost Brian Dawkins. We lost Malcolm Jenkins. Like, these kind of guys, you don't want to see them wearing different jerseys at the end of their career and not benefiting from their environment. I feel like Brandon Graham on the Browns does not make any sense. Fletcher Cox on the Browns does not make any sense because you're not going to win anything. Your best position of play right now is to stay in Philly. The hope it is that it is team friendly, but at the end of the day, I mean, how many Eagles fans you see in the parking lots wearing Fletcher Cox jerseys? Like, this guy deserves to be retiring as an Eagle.
All right, last one for me, Brian. I've asked this of a bunch of people over the last week or so. First year in an Eagle uniform, Kenneth Gainwell, 68 carries, 291 yards, 5 touchdowns, 33 receptions, 253 yards with a touchdown. Pretty good as a rook. This year, 53 carries, so 15 less carries, 240 yards, 51 less yards, and 23 receptions as compared to 33. So he went backwards in receptions too. Year 2, not as productive as year 1. As of right now, he's Eagles RB1. Can the Eagles go next year with, and we know they don't have, quote unquote, a bell cow back. Very few teams in the league do. The Eagles are just one of many that use. Excuse me, I get choked up talking about this.
Choked up talking about Kenny. Kenny's run late. Yeah.
Yeah. Can he be the Eagles' lead back next year? Do you have enough faith in Kenneth Gainwell that if they hand it to him more than anyone else next year, the Eagle running game will be fine?
I think they will be. I think it's more faith in the offensive line and the scheme. And also, we've seen what he did in the playoffs. Like, Kenny's able to disappear in between the tackles and make big explosive plays when needed. He's also able to catch out of the backfield consistently. Will he be the number 1 running back? I don't believe so. But I wouldn't be against it at all. I think he could actually do it.
Great stuff, Brian. We appreciate you coming on board with us today. We will be getting in touch that much more often during the off season. Thanks for a couple minutes today.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys for having me on, honestly. Really appreciate
Brian
it.
Cameron, PhillySportsNetwork.com. He is the managing editor of Eagles content. If you don't check out that website, you should. PhillySportsNetwork.com. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. A couple more things we got to get in. Hour number 2, we'll go a little bit more combine/draft intensive. Ian Cummings is a guy we had on a couple of times last year. He covers the NFL draft for NFLnetwork.com. Does a real good job. We haven't had him on yet this year because this is now his season. It's how we see it season, and it's Ian's season because the draft is already closing in on us, just over 2 months away. Ian Cummings will join us about 25 minutes from now, but more Mac and Mac here on Birds 365 coming up next.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Jeff D'Ambrosio doesn't need a special event to appreciate his customers. Jeff shows his appreciation to them every day of the year. Jeff makes sure to stock more new inventory than anyone and guarantees prices and payments that nobody can beat. There are so many reasons that thousands of customers know Jeff is the easy, friendly place to do business. More for their trades, no judgment zone for credit issues, the best, most reliable service department in the country. That's why I like Jeff, and I know you will too. Jeff will satisfy you every day. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Owner Appreciation Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather, the team you trust.
You got your Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald hanging with you here on Birds 365 on a football Friday. No football being played, but plenty of it being talked here on Birds 365. And we appreciate Brian Cameron did a nice job jumping in for us first time from PhillySportsNetwork.com. His take on Jason Kelce was good, and it did surprise me when I heard an argument on the radio for, no, you should be rooting for Jason Kelce to step away. That makes no sense. But we do need to hear something in the next 3 days here, John, and Jason is a very media-savvy guy, has his own podcast, does show up on WIP. We saw him on Saturday Night Live just last weekend, so he knows how to play the game with the best of them. Do you assume his own social media account sometime in the next 3 days? Because free agency starts Monday. That's when legalized tampering starts, and Howie Roseman would like to know ahead of time for Isaac Seumalo purposes, if your read is right, which you've been saying this for, months as a matter of fact, Kelce will help determine how aggressive the Eagles are in trying to re-sign Isaac Seumalo. I agree with your assessment there. Isaac is a key guy. If they bring Isaac back, anybody would complain about that, I think would be stupid, unless Isaac gets some outrageous contract, which I don't think is going to happen. I don't think the Eagles will give it to him. I don't think anybody in the league will. I think he'll get good, solid right guard money, but nothing more than that. But they got to know whether they can spend that or not, because they got a whole bunch of other decisions they got to make. So how's Jason going to handle this over the next couple of days?
Well, I thought he was going to announce it on his podcast. Maybe they still do a special. I know they have a lot of stuff in the can. They were out at the combine. They were replaying interviews they did with Howie. I think Howie already knows. I mean, to be honest, I think he's let Howie in on the question. Now Roseman said out in Indy that he can take as much time as he wants. I think that affects the Eagles' planning. Maybe it's true. But if I were a betting man, I would bet that Howie already knows. And, it's just a matter of when the actual news comes out. And like I said, I thought he'd do it on his podcast for everything you just said, Jody. He's a savvy guy, he understands, why give it to the Inquirer or WIP? Do it yourself.
Right.
He's building a pretty significant brand with his brother. So ultimately, I thought it would come down in that route. But maybe he really is thinking about it. He just had a third daughter. All the Tom Brady stuff is starting again. Nobody believes he's retired. Now all the Miami talk is coming up again. He's talking about adopting kittens, and nobody believes it. So, there's a potential that he really is still mulling it over. But in the past, he's always been very cognizant of helping the team. That's why I talk about it the way I talk about it. And I don't think that's changing. Is he going to feel different in July when it's time to report to training camp than right now? Probably. But he probably doesn't want to put the Eagles in that situation as well.
Right. And the one thing that the players who have been in a position that Jason Kelce and is in, he getting to determine when his football career ends. John, about, what would you say, 95%, 98% of the players don't get to decide that.
No.
The league decides that for them. They go, guess what? No teams are interested in bringing you in, even on a minimum deal or whatever. The sport decides when you're done playing the sport. About 2 or 3% of the players get a chance to actually dictate terms and go, now I'm done. Even though there are teams that are still interested in my services, I just want to get on with the rest of my life. So Jason's in a very advantageous and almost unique position of being able to dictate terms. You mentioned the timing of it come July. You're right. When you actually got to get back out there and do the work, and you've had the downtime, you've had the rest, you've been around your family, it's going back to work. And that's something that a lot of guys don't necessarily look forward to. But the one other thing I'll say about Jason Kelce is he just loves his teammates. He loves being an Eagle. He loves being at the facility. He loves working with his guys and with his coaches. And if July rolls around and he's not doing it, I damn sure guarantee you he's going to miss that. He might not miss the work. He might not.
Yeah, he doesn't miss the practice. Yeah, and he joked. I don't know if you saw. I mean, it was a pretty funny clip that the Eagles' first touchdown of the year on his podcast. He was so gassed because he joked he didn't have a training camp. He was so tired. And Jalen Hurts was on the show, and it was him and AJ were looking at each other like, "What's going on with this guy?" He was so tired. But he has said, look, if Doug was still here and they were running things like the way Doug, and remember, this isn't Andy Reid two-a-days. This is just a couple of years ago. He said he'd already be retired. No question about it. So the way the Eagles do things has helped him out. So he definitely doesn't want to practice like he used to practice. But there's no reason to think the Eagles aren't going to manage him the same way they did this year. And look, he had arguably his best season. He would argue he didn't. And I know he's told me that personally. So there are little things that he can't do that he used to be able to do. And he said people don't realize that. So he knows time is coming to an end. But if he can play like he played last year, I don't even know why it's a question. I mean, you got to keep riding it out until he can't play like that.
Like I said, most of the time, the league determines. Your team determines, but then the rest of the league determines whether you can play. And nobody in the league saying to Jason, yeah, you're not good enough to play anymore. So he is in control of absolutely everything. And the guy, You may think that Howie Roseman already knows. You've got a better feel for that than I do. I think Howie's waiting just like everybody else. I don't know that Jason is tipped
possible
to anyone. None of us know for sure. But this I do feel pretty sure about. Jason's going to say something before Sunday, because I really don't think he's going to call Howie and go, Howie, I need 2 more days. Give me another 24 hours. I don't think he's going to do that. If he hasn't told Howie, this is under the assumption he hasn't told him yet, which you don't necessarily agree with. I don't think he's going to push the envelope and go, listen, these next couple, my wife and I are going away. Got a christening party I got to go to. I don't think he's going past Sunday. Now, will we find out? Maybe Jason dictates the timing of the announcement and how it's going to come out. And I surely believe the Eagles would grant them that. Howie Roseman isn't going to drop dime and call John McMullen and go, oh, by the way, Kelsey told me he's back. No, that's not going to leak out to Howie. He will do whatever it takes to keep Jason happy. If he wants to say yes and or no and says, but give me a little bit more time because I want to play this the way I want to play this, I think the Eagles will give him that accord. But I do think that he will make a decision before free agency kicks in on Monday. Agree or disagree?
No, I agree. I've said that, and I know the finish line is getting here, so it's got to be pretty quick. But yeah, I mean that's always been the way he's done it in the past, so I don't think it's going to change this year. I think the only thing that's changed is he started this process last year thinking that was it. You know, this was it. 1 more year and I'm done. And now he had so much fun and so much success that, you know, that's the part he's wavering on. And that's difficult, you know. We saw what happened with Tom Brady. He got divorced over that. You know, that there's real world issues. These guys aren't robots. You know, I'm sure his wife is very involved in this decision. A lot of things go into it. And, you know, it's not turning on a video game. And I think too many fans think that.
All right, J-Mac, I've got an NFL rules / I guess you would call it paperwork type decision. I should know the answer to this, but I don't. I think I know, but I'm not sure. That's why I'm asking you. Compensatory draft picks. Can they be dealt?
Yes, they can now. That was a change. For many years,
rule?
they
Okay.
couldn't be changed.
Right,
Couldn't
that's
be
what I
traded.
thought.
Yeah, they changed it a couple years ago. I got to look up the exact year. But yes, now you can trade compensatory picks.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure about it. I knew at one point you couldn't trade them, but I didn't know if they had changed it. Thank you for telling me that is the case. You see the quote from Les Snead, the general manager of the LA Rams, who famously last year when they went to the Super Bowl said, F the picks.
Yeah.
Because they went so far all in to try and win a championship, and they won. More power to them. But there could have been a price to pay. Oh, and it was this season, paid a terrible price and were a mediocre to bad football team. And they don't have that first-round draft pick that they would benefit from having such a lousy year this past year. No, they had to trade that to win the Super Bowl the year before. He said, we're going to have to hit the brakes on trading picks for veteran players, on roster construction. We're going to have
no
to
more
hit
at them
those
picks.
brakes.
Yeah.
He's
No more.
paying the price for F them picks. But here's the good news for you Ram fans out there, all 3 of you that are watching us right now. The Rams did get 4 compensatory draft picks for this year's draft. The NFL yesterday announced their compensatory draft picks for the 2022 draft. Everybody is talking.
See how many San Francisco got? Woo! They got a whole nother draft. They got 7 picks.
Understood. And 3 of them post 3rd round, which is the highest compensatory pick you can get, is at the end of the 3rd round. San Francisco, they got 3 of them. So that tells you how good a team they were this year. They lose their quarterback, their starting quarterback. Then they lose their backup quarterback. And they lost so many free agents this past off season without replacing them and signing other teams' free agents. They got 7 compensatory picks.
Well, remember, you can only get 4 for players. So they got 3 for all their front office hires. so many people hired the diversity compensatory picks. So the D'Amico Ryans, the Rand Carthons, Robert Salas, all those piled in this year because of the timing. So 3 of those picks were for the hirings away from their organization. Right. And that's why I bring that up for Eagles fans thinking, because the Eagles might be in a position to get 6 or 7 just from a player standpoint, but that cuts off at 4. You can only get 4. So that's why the 49ers compensatory haul, needless to say, is an NFL record.
Yeah, never before has a team had 7 compensatory picks. And they are, sorry, Eagle fans, one of the legit contenders in the NFC next year. There aren't all that many. It's the Eagles and everybody else. And at the top of the everybody else list, it's San Francisco. And then there's another drop-off thereafter, as far as I'm concerned. So the Rams are going to get the benefit of this offseason with 7 compensatory picks. Most people believe the Eagles are going to get a minimum of 4 next year, which is the maximum they can get. But if they lose a lot of free agents, and they've certainly got the possibility to, we ran down the Jimmy Kemsky speculation from his column earlier this week in Philly Voice, and a whole bunch of guys he thinks are eligible for compensatory picks if they sign free agent contracts anyway. Yeah, Eagles got to wait a whole year and change for that to kick in. First thing first, we got to find out if they lose those free agents. Hopefully not all of them. But if they do, and how good a player and how big a contract they're going to get will dictate the round of the pick that they would get for the compensatory guy. One other thing I want to add to the conversation, because I've seen this written a couple different places over the last 24, 48 hours, and people may disagree with me with this. John McMullen may disagree with me with this. I've seen people speculate on the Eagles' potential signings of free agents this offseason. They lose Hargrave and CJ and Bradbury, and somebody's got to step in and play, and they'll draft guys. And do you think Josh Jobe can start at corner for the Eagles this upcoming year, Johnny May?
I do not.
Nor do I.
I think Zach McPherson is still ahead of Josh Jobe on the depth chart.
All right. Do you think Zach's don't call me Zach McPherson, or Zach don't call me Zach McPherson is good enough to start for the Eagles this upcoming year?
I would not be comfortable with that.
Okay. So there's a very good chance the Eagles will take a cornerback with their first-round draft pick, and that's a better possibility of happening. But what happens if someone offers them an unbelievable amount to give up that 10th pick because there's a quarterback still there, and how they're giving him, he can drop down 5 slots and he gets a future one and fills in the blanks on his draft this year. It's just a Monty Hall, unbelievable deal that's dropped in his lap. But then the cornerbacks all come off the board, and the Eagles don't have a player on their board that they think is strong enough to take in that first round. And all of a sudden, you got Darius Slay and to be determined on the other side of the aisle next year for the Eagle cornerback position. And I've seen a couple people write, the Eagles will stay away from signing free agents this offseason because they don't want to lose out on the compensatory
that's true
that they will get.
That is true.
I think that's dumb. I think that's stupid.
Howie believes in that.
Well, then I disagree with Howie Roseman. Like I said, people are going to disagree with me. If you got 2 players that are equal, same type player, very close, money same, talent level same, production level player, and one's a guy who was released by another organization and doesn't come under the compensation judgment, and the other one is a guy who got to free agency. If you sign him, it would be considered a comparison to a guy you lost. Oh, of course, you're going to sign the guy who you don't lose a compensatory pick for. But would you actually sign a lesser player, a less talented player, just because you wouldn't have a compensatory drop-off? You'd sign a less talented player than a better player because, you might lose that 6th round compensatory pick that you're going to get from Miles Sanders.
I don't know if it, and obviously the later you go, we're talking about players like Javon Hargrave, like CJ Gardner-Johnson, the potential 3rd round picks are a big deal. A potential 7th round pick, yeah, what you're saying, who cares? But we're talking the big guys. So, and if you're not in a position to get back your own players, you're probably not going to be in a position to bring in a similar player from outside the organization. I hear what you're saying about 6th, 7th rounders, not as important. But where Howie's very savvy is, look, guys who get cut elsewhere. James Bradbury last year, not susceptible to the compensatory formula in a season. That happens all the time. The later you go, whatever the cutoff is, June 1st or whatever the cutoff is, all of a sudden you're not eligible for a compensatory pick. So when everybody loses their mind, and they will lose their mind, and I try to calm everybody down, and Howie said this last year, everybody was losing their mind in the first 2 days. Oh, the Eagles aren't doing anything. How can they do that? And just settle down.
Johnny Mac, we're only 6 days away from that when people lose their mind.
Exactly.
Because the Eagles didn't do anything immediately out of the gates.
And they're going to do it again this year, because they're going to lose certain players. And that's why Howie's on record saying we're going to lose certain players, but they're going to gain some players. And they're very savvy, whether you want to go back to the Chris Longs in 2017 and the LeGarrette Blunts, of waiting to that demarcation line and still getting good players. Patrick Peterson, you're talking about cornerbacks. There's an older guy. If there was one guy who played well on that crappy Minnesota defense last year, it was Patrick Peterson in that system. The Fangio-like scheme at his age, just very smart, very savvy. Isn't what he was as a potential Hall of Fame player, from a talent perspective, from a trait standpoint, lost a step, but he's playing in this defense, very similar to James Bradbury. Maybe they get him later in the process. I'm just throwing that name out there. Howie has earned the benefit of that. He should have earned the benefit. He knows what he's doing. And when you're talking about the Eagles won't sign, he's talking about, and I'm talking about, potential 3rd round picks, the big name players. Yeah, when you start getting, and he did it with Andrew Sandeo back in the years. Remember, they cut him. He was playing well. The coaching staff was really enamored of Andrew Sandeo. I know the fans weren't, but they really liked Andrew because he's a very smart player. Did everything they wanted, blah, blah, blah. There was that cutoff point, the 9th or 10th game. If you kept him on the roster, you weren't going to get a compensatory pick. And he said, you know what? I'd rather have the pick, and they cut him. And they ended up getting Marcus Epps, and it worked out long term. The guy's very savvy. He's very savvy, and he's going to judge the particular price. He's not going to take a lesser player. The point is, he's not in a position. If he can't get Javon back, he's not bringing in somebody else at the same money.
Right. No, there isn't someone like that even available. Yeah. There isn't.
There's the kid from Denver who might be Draymond Jones, but that's about it. So that's the players that people are talking about. They're going to lose some players, and they're not going to sign lesser players to big money, or what they would feel would be lesser players in this organization, and lose out in compensatory picks.
And this is the only point I'm trying to make, just to stay within the parameters you're taking the discussion, which are right and just. If you believe that Javon Hargrave is close to if we're talking average annual value, close to a $20 million deal per year guy.
That's what Schefter said.
That's what Schefter says. Fine. Yeah. So we'll use Schefter's numbers. Let's say this Denver kid, who you're suggesting is close, is potentially in that same neighborhood. So 17 million. He's not quite as high as Hargrave. It's what Spotrac or Adam Schefter or anyone else would speculate his average annual value is. Let's say he wants to play for the Eagles, and he's willing to come and play for the Eagles for 12. which is below what most people assume his market value would be. If Howie Roseman says, well, no, I'm going to pass on him because he's going to be considered a match with Javon Hargrave, and I'll lose that on a third-round compensatory pick, then that's not all in, Howie. Then that's not, we want to go back to the Super Bowl next year, Howie. That's we're trying to balance between 2023 and the future as well. No, I don't want Howie to lose his edge of being all in. Now, it's a very specific, I'm threading a needle here to make a point, but if I read it once, I read it 3 times in the past 24 hours. The Eagles won't be signing free agents that they would lose compensatory. The Eagles are banking on those compensatory draft picks next year. Next year, the Eagles are going to have all of compensatory draft picks. Right now, I don't care a whole hell of a lot about 2024 compensatory draft picks. I'm more worried about the 2023 Eagles and going back to the Super Bowl. And if you got to bend a little bit to be able to get the best player to replace someone that you're potentially losing who helped you make the Super Bowl this year, then you got to be open-minded. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Well, Jody, I hear you, and that's where the savvy part of it comes in. But to use that example, I mean, Draymond Jones is 25 years old. We talk about it all the time with Jalen Hurts. He's not taking $4 million less to come here, so that kind of stuff takes care of itself. Yeah, that's where the savvy part comes into it. If Howie's got a player who's going to get $16 million somewhere else, and he says, "I want to play for the Eagles." He might be from Philadelphia. He might be Hassan Reddick, whatever. Yeah, he'll do it. He's not a dumb guy. That's where the savvy part is. But that kind of stuff's not going to happen with a 25-year-old. We talk about it all the time with Eagles fans talking Jalen Hurts. No, he's not taking a cost-effective deal. This is his first opportunity to make money, and he's going to go out, rightfully so, and make money. So that kind of stuff takes care of itself.
Let me question Howie Roseman's savviness. And you and I are both Howie Roseman fans. We're well on record, Howie Roseman Appreciation Society here on Birds 365. We both think he's well-deserved Executive of the Year, and we congratulate him.
I haven't got my apologies for that one, by the way, Jody.
Well,
I used to get killed for
don't hold your breath on that. Neither one of us are going to get that. Chuck Clark got traded yesterday. Chuck Clark was a guy whose name we bandied about here before C.J. Gardner-Johnson came to town, starting safety for the Ravens. They went out and signed Marcus Williams, who, as John likes to remind us, the Eagles are very interested in. And if the Ravens hadn't gone over the top, they probably would have gotten him. They didn't, but that's okay. They draft Kyle Hamilton, who had a really good first year as a rookie. So they ended up trading Chuck Clark yesterday, which, again, coming up to the team year, the league year is probably a motivating factor. And he got traded to the Jets, and all he had to give up was a 7th-round pick. Now, I was surprised because I thought that when we talked about with Chuck Clark last year, and again, he's a year older now in the last year of his contract, different situation, making a trade a year later. But he did not play badly for the Raiders last year. He was just Ravens last year. He's just their 3rd best safety. They've got 2 guys that are better than him, but doesn't mean he's like the 65th best safety in the NFL. I guarantee you he's higher than that. He just is on a team that has 2 safeties that are better. If you think there's a chance to lose Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, if you're Howie Roseman with 2 7th-round picks, would the Eagles have been well advised to trade for Chuck Clark yesterday?
Yeah, I remember talking about this. I just don't think he's a fit for what they do defensively. He's more of a movement, I don't want to call him a box safety, but, he plays all over the place. He's more of the big, more of the Malcolm Jenkins type, not that good, but more of that type of safety. And that's not what the Eagles were looking for. And that ended up, when we talked about it last year, that's what I said. And that ended up being correct. Marcus Epps, coverage safety. Chauncey, cornerback, coverage safety. That's the defense they played. Now, are they going to change that defense? I don't think they are. I don't think they're going to change the philosophy. So they're still going to be on the market for coverage safeties. That's going to be more important to them. Clark, as he, He played five. He played a lot of snaps. By the way, you asked me to look up what he was. He was 46th of 88. So basically in a hat and
middle of the road,
middling safety.
Yeah.
And he was who number one was? Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah,
number one in the entire.
That's
NFL.
one that JM definitely agreed on. We both loved him coming into the draft.
Yeah. But, when you look at his numbers, so he played well over 1,000 snaps, played 531 at safety, 331 in the box, 180 as a slot, 77 lined up on the defensive line, 30 as a wide cornerback. I mean, this guy played all over the field in a Malcolm Jackson. That's not what the Eagles do. That's not what they do. That's not the type of player they're looking at. And that's why I said people overlook fit. We're going to talk to Ian Cummings here in a couple minutes. And that's what, running back, fit. Why do you need an eye back in the Philadelphia offense? You don't. That's not what they do. They're an RPO zone read offense. Fit is a big thing, and Chuck Clark is a different kind of safety. If Jim Schwartz was still here, I'd say, yeah, that makes some sense. But that's not what they do defensively. And it's, I don't think they're going away from that in the shift from Jonathan Gannon to Sean Desai.
Right. But here's my read on the player. You're right in that in the Ravens defense, he was asked to do other things. And his flexibility made him capable of doing those things. And that's why he played as much as he did. But I think he's just a good enough player that he could fit into the Eagles scheme. That if the Eagles took him on, it wouldn't be, oh my God, his only virtue is flexibility and that he can do a lot of different things. No, I think he could do what the Eagles need him to do in the Eagles scheme. I think he's that talented a player. And if they're starting Reed Blankenship and I think they'll probably draft another safety this year. I don't even know.
I think they're going to get Marcus back. I think there's a good chance they get Marcus. But I think they're going to lose CJ and get Marcus back. And that's what they want. And right or wrong, that's what they want. They want coverage safeties. It's like Harrison Smith's probably going to get cut over the weekend. That's a guy who's going to the Hall of Fame, a big name guy. He's not a fit. Not a fit. Wasn't a fit in that defense out there. Not a fit in this defense here. I don't think Chuck Clark's a fit for this defense. Now,
yeah, I think
you want to say change the defense. I'm not.
No. Here's where you and I separate. I think he can play an Eagle defense. What of his game tells you he couldn't play an Eagle defense?
He's a bit. The strength of his game is not coverage. The strength of his game, he's a big safety. He's a physical guy, physical in the modern NFL. He's so near. I mentioned
is Reed Blankenship's strength coverage.
Yeah, Reed's a post safety. That's what people don't know for whatever reason. That's what he played at Middle Tennessee. That's what he played last year with the Eagles. And I think they're probably a little bit too comfortable with Reed. I'll agree with that, but no, he's not a box safety. He's not a box safety. I think people do that, probably because of the color of his skin, to be honest. And they think he's not a post safety, but he is. He plays center field more than that, more than anything. And that's what they want. And I'm not saying they're going to hand the job to Reed Blankenship because they have to be realistic. But I mentioned, bottom 20 in coverage, not his strength. So when I talk about the PFF rankings, about half, mid-range safety, he's bottom third in coverage. That's the weakness to his game, and that's not what the Eagles want.
I need to see Reed Blankenship have a full year as a star. He dropped in, played a couple of games.
Well, I'm not saying
I need to see with my own two eyes that he's a.
I would not be
safety.
Comfortable saying Reed Blankenship is my starting safety. I think you got to bring in
where did Reed Blankenship play college again?
Middle Tennessee State.
I'm not going to judge Reed Blankenship's coverage ability in the NFL because of what he did at Middle Tennessee State.
Hey, you know who else played it?
I need to see some of that with my own eyes in the NFL
who else played,
before I make that determination.
You know who else played at Middle Tennessee State?
It's been a bit of a safety university. I'll give you
Yes.
that.
Kevin Byard.
Byard is a damn good player, but again, I'm reserving judgment on the coverage abilities of Reed Blankenship off the small look that we got last year. That's all I'm going to say. All right, we're working on getting in contact with Ian Cummings. Apparently, he hasn't gotten the link to be able to join us, so we're doing work behind the scenes to make sure he does get the link. We're going to talk some draft with Ian Cummings from Pro Football Network, hopefully next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Jeff D'Ambrosio doesn't need a special event to appreciate his customers. Jeff shows his appreciation to them every day of the year. Jeff makes sure to stock more new inventory than anyone and guarantees prices and payments that nobody can beat. There are so many reasons that thousands of customers know Jeff is the easy, friendly place to do business. More for their trades, no judgment zone for credit issues, the best, most reliable service department in the country. That's why I like Jeff, and I know you will too. Jeff will satisfy you every day. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Owner Appreciation Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather, the team you trust.
Appreciate your streaming on in on Birds 365, Mac and Mac, with Ian Cummings from Pro Football Network, one of their draft analysts, one of the best that we had the chance to get to know last year leading up to the draft, which means he's got to know we're going to be asking a couple more times between now and April for him to jump in with us. Ian, thanks much for hopping aboard. How'd it go in Indy for you?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't in Indy personally, but covering it remotely was fun, man. I mean, every year the NFL Combine provides a lot of interesting nuggets and, new revelations for prospects. And of course, I mean, all the testing, some crazy performances. Anthony Richardson, obviously the headliner there, but at every position you had risers that were, coming off the board. And I know PFN had NFL guys down there talking to, executives, the podium. So much information to sift through, man, but that's what we signed up for in draft season. So it's a fun time.
Yeah, it's Ian season. Good to see you, buddy.
Sorry about the technical difficulties again. I remember last year, I think we had some as well. So I don't know what it is, but hey, we got it. We got it going. So we're good.
All right. Good to see you. I want to start at cornerback because I want to start with the Eagles. A lot of people have focused on corner with them at number 10 overall. And they haven't taken a corner in the first round for 2 decades now. But, they wanted to take a corner a couple years ago. They were really excited about J.C. Horn, really excited about Patrick Surtain. Didn't work out for him. They ended up trading up, getting Devontae Smith. So what I want to do is, when you look at the top corners in this draft, how do they compare to players like Horn and Patrick Surtain? Are they that good, or are they at that level? Because if the Eagles don't have that type of prospect, they're probably going to look in a different direction.
Yeah, I think there are two guys that you could consider at number 10. I won't say that there's a guy who's in the tier of Horn or Surtain, because I think those guys were really a cut above. I mean, those guys were true blue chip corner prospects, and we've seen both of them pan out as phenomenal starters in the NFL. But there are two guys I'll throw out there. One is Christian Gonzalez from Oregon. The other is Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. I think those are the guys who if you're thinking at corner of 10, those are the guys that you would consider. Christian Gonzalez is about as close to as you'll get to Patrick Surtain in this class. I mean, the size, speed, athleticism that he possesses is really impressive. I mean, he tested extremely well at the NFL Combine, which you watch the tape, it's no surprise to anybody. He's got length. He's got really good fluidity, really good, stride quickness and explosiveness out of his breaks. But some of the transitions that he makes, maintaining his strides in space and blanketing receivers, the guy just moves differently. I mean, it's rare for a guy to be so sudden and fluid at his size. And then at the same time, he's got great zone awareness. He's got great ball skills. And he's adaptable in zone. That's one thing that I really like about him. There was a play, I can't remember who it was against, but he was covering a drag route, moving to the right side of the field. And he saw a receiver streaking upside on the boundary, and he kind of peeled off his route and turned upfield and made an adjustment in stride and picked off the pass. That's what you're getting with him. I think a really, really strong combination of mental acuity and athletic gifts, and the very strong combo. I don't think he's as physical as a Horn or Surtain, but definitely the size, speed is there. And then Devin Witherspoon, he is physical, man. I mean, you watch him play in run support. He lays the wood downhill. He's very chippy and aggressive in coverage. He'll blanket guys. He'll stay in their grill. But he's a very high energy athlete too. He doesn't quite have the size and length that Gonzalez has, but with Witherspoon, you're still getting that speed, that explosiveness, and that ability to disrupt the catch points. So, I think both those guys provide something, that you want at 10. I don't think either one is at that caliber of prospect that Surtain or Horn was. And then another factor to consider is that this cornerback class is extremely deep, to the point where, if you think you have a bigger need at 10, maybe you pass up corner and take a few guys later on, because there is depth to capitalize on.
All right, it is in season. It is mock season. Everybody's putting up mocks, adjusting mocks, which is only fair. You put a mock out 2 months before the draft, you sure as hell can change it between now and the week thereof. But I'm always interested in just your overall ranking of players, not trying to fix needs with teams and the like. Do you have a top 25, top 50, top 100 ranking as of right now, Ian?
Yeah, I do. It's always in flux. It's always fluctuating. I think, the most important part of the draft cycle at this point is reevaluation, right? At this point, you've done most of the groundwork from a tape perspective, but you never want to be too boxed into an outcome, right? So I think that's part of it. I do have a February big board. I'll try and pull it up here while we're talking, but it's always open to reevaluation. That's what I'll say about
All
that.
right. Well, hopefully you get it pulled up, because there's one particular play I want to ask you about, because people are talking about him here in Philadelphia. And this is where everything else in the draft comes into play, like team's history and need. Where is Bijan Robinson rank in your just straight evaluation talent level of those who are eligible for draft this year?
I had a feeling you were going to ask about Bijan. I was like, he's probably going to ask about Bijan. He's actually it's interesting. Yeah, he's my second overall player.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay,
Now here's the thing.
High.
Here's the thing. My board does not account for positional value.
Right. That's why I asked it.
That's up to the teams and the coaches, to discern, how high are we willing to take a guy like a running back, right? So that's the thing, though. That's why I try to not account for positional value, is because I don't want, I want you to know how good Bijan is. So if you are willing to take him there, I'll say that's a reasonable outcome for you. I think ultimately, for a team like the Eagles, they do have some needs that they're going to have to address. They got roster turnover coming at positions like edge and defensive tackle and corner that are more important intrinsically than running back. But, you get to number 10 overall, and, you want to know if this guy is talented enough to at least consider. And I think Bijan is talented enough to at least consider there. Do you want to to take him there, that's up to you. But, you know, looking at, you know, just his profile as a runner, man, I mean, 5'11", 215. He's got good athleticism. He showed that at the NFL Combine. And I think it wasn't even a question mark for him. It was more of, you know, we're not sure he's elite here. But then he proved he was at the NFL Combine, because you look at the tape and he's so good at everything else. I mean, the vision, the creative instincts, the ability to offset defenders and manipulate space at his size is uncanny. I mean, you don't see that every day. And then once he's at the second level, he finishes with physicality. He'll bounce off tackles and stay on his feet. He's a phenomenal receiving threat. You know, there's not a ton there aren't many holes that you can poke in his game. And that's what's so exciting about him.
Let me just do a quick follow-up, then Johnny jumps in. Give me your top 3 or 4 running backs in order. Bijan number 1. How big is drop off to 2 to 3 to 4?
Yeah, the drop off, Bijan is obviously the number 1 guy. At number 2, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs at 16th overall, so he's my next guy up. Now he's more of a niche guy. You know, he's not going to be the workhorse like Bijan, but in the modern NFL where versatile weapons are all the rage, he definitely has a fit. And then going down further, I don't think I have the next. The next running backs for me are outside the top 40. And I think RB3 is Tank Bigsby, and right after him is Kendra Miller from TCU. So
You're underrating Zach Charbonneau. I'll tell you right now, Cummings, he's going to be a stud back in the NFL.
He's physical. I think he's in my top 100. I gotta scroll down here, but that's the thing about this running back class. It's another position group that's very deep again. So if you're not comfortable taking a running back at 10th overall, don't worry about it, because there's dudes down the line.
Yeah, I was talking to Daniel Jeremiah on his conference call, and he had 13 backs with at least 3rd round grades. So I don't know where you are, but you know, we just saw the Kansas City Chiefs win a Super Bowl with a 7th round rookie running back being sort of the bell cow. I gave you the comparison with the cornerbacks. There was one running back, the Eagles. We all know their history, so I'm going to have you put on the Howie Roseman hat. They considered one running back in my time covering this team in the 1st round, and that was Christian McCaffrey, way back in 2017. And they did that because of his receiving skills more than his running skills. Not that he's not a great running back. You just mentioned Bijan. I know this is probably unfair. He's a great receiver. Not that good, is he? He's not Christian McCaffrey good as a receiver.
Yeah, I think with a receiving threat, there's a lot of different elements to take into account. You know, it's a tiered evaluation, right? Like, you want to know if they can run routes out of the backfield. You want to know if they can split out wide, you know, in motion a little bit, because that gives your offense another element of dynamic, you know, dimensions that they can add to it. And then you want to know when the ball comes his way, can he actually adjust? Can he catch it beyond his frame? Is he a body catcher? Does he have good hand technique? You know, those are all things that you consider. I'll say for Bijan, I do think he's a pretty good receiving threat. I think Christian McCaffrey is a very high bar to clear, because you look at, you know, he was really kind of the standard coming out. I don't think Bijan is quite that good when it comes to, you know, maybe running routes. Maybe he doesn't have quite as expansive of a route tree, but you watch him, you know, move upfield in a seam, right? And, you know, the ball comes his way, it's overthrown. He can rise vertically and adjust for it. I mean, he's a very natural pass catcher when the ball's in the air. And I think that's something that, you know, it's very translatable. Wherever you get him targets, he can make the plays on the ball. So I won't say he's at McCaffrey's level, but I will say he's you know, noticeably better than your average running back there.
Even though it probably has no effect on the Eagles, I'm just intrigued to know, which of the 2 defensive studs did you have number 1? If you had Bijan Robinson number 2, was it Will Anderson or was it Jalen Carter?
Yeah, man. So that's a tough one again, because with Jalen Carter, you know, at the NFL Combine, another big development was, you know, the investigation into his involvement in the crash that killed a Georgia staffer and a teammate, right? So I think that's going to be a complicating factor for him. You know, I think every team's going to come to their own conclusion on that and do their own study and kind of figure out, you know, what does this say about Jalen Carter, and are we still willing to take the risk on him, right? You know, it's going to be interesting, right? With that hanging over him, I would be more inclined to have Will Anderson number 1 overall, because you don't have that issue off the field. But I do think Jalen Carter is still going to be in the top 10 conversation for a lot of teams. So I've flip-flopped on them all cycle. You know, on the field, purely, they're both very, very good players.
Ian, I was texting with a former NFL exec, and he gave me 6 to 8 when he was talking about true top tier blue chip players at the top of this draft. Do you think that's low? Do you think that's high? Number 1, and number 2, are any of that 6 to 8 quarterbacks? We know they're going to go, but do they belong in that category?
Yeah, that's the kicker, man. I mean, you know that no matter what, the positional value of the quarterback is going to trump everything else, right? And we see that every year.
Yeah, well, until last year, where one was taken in the first round, nobody else was taken in the third round. So every once in a while, the NFL does stick its head up and go, yeah, sorry, not this year. No matter how much we emphasize quarterback play, if you're just not good enough, you're not good enough.
Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. I think last year was an anomaly in that respect because, you know, and there was a part of that last year's cycle where we're thinking like, oh, the traits are going to bring these guys up to the top anyway, right? We thought anyway, and it wasn't the case. So you're absolutely right. You know, the NFL surprised you time and time again. This year, it is different because you have CJ Stroud, who's a very good prospect. You have Bryce Young, whose size notwithstanding is a very good prospect. It's going to be interesting how they view that. You got Anthony Richardson, who, you know, is pretty raw, you know, on the field. You know, people are going to be very polarized on him, but the tools are out of this world. And all it takes is one team to fall in love with that. Same with Will Levis, right? So I don't think any of those quarterbacks are blue chip prospects, but I do think there's a chance that they can become very good franchise quarterbacks. And that's ultimately what it takes for them to, you know, take a risk on them. As for your, you know, John, your previous question, you know, how many blue chip prospects are there? I'd say 6 to 8 is a fair figure. I'd say it's a little high for me personally, actually. I don't think there's a ton of blue chip talent in this class. I look at Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Bijan Robinson, and maybe Christian Gonzalez, right? But after that, it kind of falls off. Now, there's still a ton of very good players, but blue chip, you know, I think we need to, you know, re-emphasize just how high of a bar that is to clear. You're talking about an impact player on day one, a guy who's going to transform your team. You know, there's a lot of players who could become that in 1 to 2 years, but I think day one guys, you know, it's a little bit thinner in this class. That's not a bad thing, right? You know, I think the depth is stronger, and maybe teams are going to look at that and say, we should trade back, acquire more capital, and kind of capitalize on the depth in that 20 to 75 range. But it's going to be a conversation to have because it's not quite as deep at the top as we've seen.
So if you think that highly of Gonzalez, you don't think he'll be there at 10 when the Eagles pick?
It depends, right? You know, again, as a draft analyst, I think the most important thing is to say, I have no idea what's going to happen. So, you know, maybe he falls off the board. You know, there's a few teams in the top 10 who maybe consider him, but they also need quarterbacks, a lot of them. So, you know, it ultimately depends on, you know, what your value proposition is. I think there's a good chance that he's there at 10. You know, I can't speak, and maybe he's there at 10 and they pass on him, right? You know, I'm high on him, but maybe they have some more concerns. So the variables that come into this are always it's so expansive, and you have to take them all into account. But yeah, I think there's a chance, if I had to guess, probably goes within the 8 to 15 range. I'd say maybe 16. I think the Commanders are at 16. They could consider taking him. So he's a fun prospect, and for me, he's very high. But you know, every team is different.
Edge rushers. I want to go edge rushers with you because that's something the Eagles value as well. And that could be in a conversation always with this team. The top 30 visits are starting to leak out. The Eagles, the first 3 were offensive or defensive linemen. It's no surprise. That's where this team always seems to go, default to. So if you're talking about guys at 10, say, you know, Will Anderson's not going to be there. Who would be in that equation from the edge rushers?
So for the edge rushers, I think you're looking at 3 guys, and they're all pretty similar stylistically, which is interesting. But I think Tyree Wilson of Texas Tech is one that's been mocked there a lot. I think Miles Murphy from Clemson is one that's been in that conversation. And another that I'll throw in is Iowa's Lucas Van Ness. Van Ness is a little bit raw on the hand usage side, but he's honestly one of my favorite of that group because, you know, you look at the athleticism and the power that he has. They're all power-oriented guys, which is pretty interesting. I think Van Ness measured in at like 6'5", over 260, around 265. 34-inch arms. So he, you know, when he gets his hands inside your chest, he can drive you back pretty easy. Tyree Wilson, 6'6", around 270, right? Almost 36-inch arms. So these guys are built to drive tackles back. That's what they do, right? And then in run defense, hold the line, you know, kind of hold their ground and run support. So that's what they can do. And I think all of them provide that enforcer element. They're all a little bit different within that mold. I think Tyree Wilson is the most violent rusher, you know, the heavy hands, the length that he possesses. He's a crazy, you know, he's got a hot motor down the field. Miles Murphy, I think, has the best hands out of that group to this point. He can still improve, but he has shown he can multitask around the edge and stack counters. And then Lucas Van Ness, to me, why I'm so excited about him is that if you're a taller guy, usually sometimes you struggle to acquire leverage, load your hips, and, you know, get under your opponent's pads. I think he's the most natural when it comes to doing that. And that helps you apply your length and explosiveness, you know, the most efficiently, so I'm a big fan of all those guys. I think they'd all bear consideration there. They're all those power oriented guys with the tools to mold. There are a few others, but I think ultimately, once you get past that group, you're thinking maybe we should trade down or wait for them at 30.
All right. Speaking of trading down and giving Harry Roseman some wiggle room, let's say top half of the draft. So the Eagles are right now at 10. They would trade down, but not drop out of the first half. So somewhere between 10 and 16. Is there a safety that merits that kind of consideration? A top 16 value player at the safety position? Because both Eagle safeties are free agents this year. We're assuming they're bringing at least one back. But what happens if they both find greener pastures elsewhere? I know Howie doesn't like to draft for need, but if you tell me he's a top 16 value, then you're not drafting for need. You're drafting for value. Is there a safety in this year's draft? If I remember correctly, all three of us kind of agreed. We loved Kyle Hamilton in last year's draft. Is there a guy like that in this year's draft?
There's not a guy like Kyle Hamilton, unfortunately.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, just straight up, there's not a guy like. I mean, last year's safety class was very strong. I mean, I had three guys in my top 10 with Kyle Hamilton, Lewis Seen from Georgia, who unfortunately had that season-ending injury with the Vikings, and then Daxton Hill, who's going to be the heir apparent to Jesse Bates in Cincinnati, right? So last year's class at safety was abnormally strong, and I think what we're seeing this year is kind of swinging the other way, not quite. But there is one guy I really like, Brian Branch from Alabama. He didn't test quite as well as we expected him to, but I think the functional athleticism on tape is very strong for him. The only question is, where are you going to fit him, right? Because he played in the slot a lot at Alabama, and the Eagles do have Vontae Maddox. He only played 9 games this past year, but if he's coming back into that role, then maybe Brian Branch is a little redundant, right? So I think that's going to be the conversation to have. He can play safety if you want him to. He can drop back into too high, play in zones and kind of manage space on the back end. He's a phenomenal playmaker when the ball comes his way. He's physical. He plays up to his competition. He's fluid. Very, very free as an athlete in short ranges. So I'm a big fan of Brian Branch and what he has to offer. He's, one of those top defensive backs for me, but to consider him at 10 for the Eagles, who might not have a, confined role for him, I would.
Well, no, the way you're describing him sounds like an Eagle safety
exactly
to me.
Right. Yeah.
Johnny
That's
Mack
exactly
tells me if you can't cover, you can't play safety for the Eagles.
No. Yeah.
I mean,
that's Fangio's scheme, man.
He's the thing with Brian Branch is that, you need to know where you're going to play him. And that's the thing, again, he played the slot a lot at Alabama. He can man up, He can man up, right? He can do it. He's got great off-man technique and he's got great instincts and coverage. It's just a matter of, how high you are on the athleticism too, because I think the short area athleticism is really good personally. I think whenever you see a combine number that, you're not sure, you go and cross check the tape, because combine measurements are very good, but there are some guys who maybe play better on tape than they test or test better than they play, right? So you need to look at how it translates. Brian Branch to me is a better playing athlete than he tested. And I think the long speed is a little bit of a concern too. So again, it's a lot of factors to take into account, but for the Eagles, especially, there's some safeties who performed well at the combine. Daniel Scott from California is one. Jason Taylor, the second from Oklahoma State, is another. So maybe guys that they consider on late day 2 or day 3 who could go on to become very good players. And we know they coached up Marcus Epps very well. So maybe that's the route that they take.
At IC_draft, I think you changed that from the last time.
Yep, rebranded a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah. Follow Ian on Twitter, ProFootballNetwork.com. You mentioned measurables. I want to talk. I'll end it with the most interesting potential top 10, top first round prospect to me is Kalijah Kancey, the kid from Pitt, just because, he's so small, but the league is changing as a whole. He's so explosive. There's the obvious comps with Aaron Donald because he's a Pitt guy. I don't want to go that route. I think it's unfair for anybody to compare anybody to Aaron Donald. Where do you have Kalijah Kancey?
Yeah, so he's in my top 50 for sure. He's up there. I think he's another one, kind of like Branch. You need to know what role you're going to use him for, right? Because he can't do everything, and that's the issue with him. I overestimated his length a little bit. I thought he was going to measure in maybe close to 32. He ended up being under 31. But so the size is definitely, here's the thing, like he was around 6 foot, 270, I think, 275, and that is very small, a defensive tackle. If you have good proportional length to counteract that, that helps a little bit, but he doesn't have that either. So, it's one of those things where offensive linemen, they can get your hands on you easier. And once they do, you don't have as much mass, so they can move you more easily. And so for Kalijah Kancey, that's going to be something that he's going to work against at the next level very often. And that kind of complicates his role, especially in run defense. You saw in run defense, if you're asking him to penetrate and deconstruct blocks, he can do that. But if you want him to hold his ground and kind of prevent displacement, he's not a guy who's going to be able to do that on the interior, right? Now, I do think, you mentioned the athleticism. He's extremely athletic, and not just athletic, I think flexible too. There were a lot of reps, pass rushing reps at Pitt where he used ankle flexion to pry past the block, invade those tight spaces. And he's got really, really good flexibility as a defensive tackle, enough where I think, along with his explosiveness and short area twitch, he's an extremely high energy rusher as well. I think you could shade him to 5-tech on some reps, maybe on run defense reps, shade him to 5-tech where he has the size to hold up a little bit better. For Kalijah Kancey, with a guy as unique as him, I don't want to confine him to defensive tackle, because maybe you can move him outside in certain situations and allow him to kind of play to his strengths a little bit better out there. But on pass rushing reps, for sure, keep him at 3-tech or 4-eye and let him work one-on-one against guys. You want to have a nose tackle alongside him, which Jordan Davis projects pretty well into that role, eat up blocks and allow Kalijah Kancey one-on-one opportunities. I do think there is a role for him, but I think you need to be flexible because he's so unique. And that's going to be the issue for some teams. At a certain point, if you're willing to take him, if you have a vision for him like that, move him around a little bit, you could be successful. But it's one of those things where you got to know what you're doing, because if you just throw him out there at 3-tech, on every rep, it's going to be up and down for sure.
All right, last one for me, Ian, and I'll let you do a little bragging here. Was there a guy this year that you watched on film and it looked good to you? All right, but the tackles weren't there, the interceptions weren't there for the D-back. It wasn't part of a great offensive line, whatever, but you saw something and you liked what you saw, and it just didn't show on the stats, on the analytics this year. And he got invited to Indy, and he did something at the combine that you said, yeah, see, that's what I saw. That he put up a time, he did the shuttle, whatever it was, but it confirmed your thought that, all right, doesn't look like he should be a day 2 pick or a day 3 pick or an undrafted, but a guy who you saw at Indy and you said, that's what I saw on tape.
I want to preface with saying it's a slippery slope. I don't want to get too caught up in this, because, for every guy like that, there's another where it's like, oh, I didn't see that, so let me look back. Yeah. So, it's always a fun process to go through, but I'll throw out a few names, because there are a few guys that I really like that really showed out. One is a guy that I liked this past summer. He caught my eye very early, Tennessee offensive tackle Darnell Wright. He played Will Anderson last year, and there was a rep in run defense where
he was good at the Senior Bowl. Yeah, I was impressed by him at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, he was very good at the Senior Bowl. He's one of those guys where, coming into the season, there was some day 2 hype for him. I was really, right away, I was like, I think this guy's got early round potential for sure. And, he's a 5-star recruit out of high school, so it's not groundbreaking, right? But it was really good to see him test well athletically, because I think that was the question that some people had about him being as big as he is, 6'5", 333. Can he move? He can move. I think on tape, he's got really good matching footwork and short area athleticism. Corrective athleticism is what I like to use the term for. But as an offensive tackle against edge rushers, that's what you need, right? And he's got that. And then at 6'5", 333, 34-inch arms almost, he can really, once he gets his hands on you, it's over. There was a rep against Will Anderson last year. Everyone was really excited about his showing against Anderson this year. But last year, he had a rep where he had one arm extended, and he torqued him and folded Anderson basically into submission on a run rep. So he was a fun player. Another Tennessee guy, Cedric Tillman, for me, I actually have him rated over Jalen Hyatt in my wide receiver rankings. I'm a big fan of what he has to offer. An injury sidelined him for most of this past season, but at 6'5", around 250, or 6'3", around 215 pounds, I think he had a 37-inch vertical, 37 or 38. He had a 4.54 40-yard dash, so explosive, enough deep speed for his size. And, you watch him on tape, he's a very nuanced route runner. He's phenomenal at the catch point. I think Cedric Tillman's going to be a guy who really surprises people with how productive he is right out the bat, because he's a great wide receiver. And then one more, Texas defensive tackle Moro Ajomo. This was a guy I saw live at the Shrine Bowl, and he was phenomenal at the Shrine Bowl. But he's one of my favorite defensive tackles in the class because of his player type. You look at him, 6'3", 290. So a little light for defensive tackle, but he's got 34.5-inch arms. So that's phenomenal proportional length. And then he had, I think, a 5.0 something 40-yard dash, 33-inch vertical. So he's explosive. He is very quick off the line. And once he fully extends, he can drive you back so suddenly. He's a fun player. He's a top 75 prospect for me. And, he's been a day 3 guy for a large part of the cycle, but I would take him on day 2. And I think he's going to be a very good pro.
And my bad for not reaching out before to get the link to you sooner than we did. You made up for it by giving us all this great information. Ran a little long on the show, but that's okay. We appreciate your coming on and doing as much for you as you did. Yeah, we're going to be talking to you several times between now and the draft, if that's okay.
Hey, I'm always down for it, Jody. You know I am.
That is Ian Cummings from ProFootballNetwork.com. Their draft analyst, outstanding insight from him today. We just kind of fell in him. Did you find Ian last year? I think you did, right?
Yeah. I'm taking credit for that.
As good as he was. I glommed onto him as soon as we had him on the show, and I saw how good he was. I said, oh, man, I need to get this guy on other shows that I do. He's that good.
Well, I don't blame you. Yeah, he's tremendous. He is really good. Because there's one thing, he knows all the information, but he can deliver it in a, for the fans in a interesting way. So he does a tremendous job.
And the offensive lineman from Tennessee, I already had scouted out for myself, but that Cedric Tillman from Tennessee, injured all year, could be an under-the-radar type guy. That's one that Eagle fans should write down, because the Eagles aren't taking a wide receiver high, but if Tillman is an early day 3 guy because of injury issues, we need to upgrade from Quez Watkins at the number 3 wide receiver position. Maybe Cedric Tillman, wide receiver from Tennessee, is the name you want to keep your eye on. All right, McMullen and McDonald coming back to put a bow on the show. Stay right there.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Jeff D'Ambrosio doesn't need a special event to appreciate his customers. Jeff shows his appreciation to them every day of the year. Jeff makes sure to stock more new inventory than anyone and guarantees prices and payments that nobody can beat. There are so many reasons that thousands of customers know Jeff is the easy, friendly place to do business. More for their trades, no judgment zone for credit issues, the best, most reliable service department in the country. That's why I like Jeff, and I know you will too. Jeff will satisfy you every day. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Owner Appreciation Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather, the team you trust.
Johnny Mac here with you. Running a little late because we got Ian late, and then we were not going to cut Ian short because his info is just too good. So we wanted to keep him on a specific amount of time. So thank you very much for hanging with us. It should be a fun weekend. Johnny Mac prediction time. By the time we return Monday morning, will we know? Not Howie Roseman know. Will John McMullen, Jody McDonald, and Eagle Nation know if Jason Kelsey is playing again for the Eagles this year?
Yeah, I've been saying it. I can't change now, Jody. We're at the finish line, but I think he's going to alert the Eagles. So I think we'll know.
Will the Eagles alert us? That's the question.
Yeah, most likely. So
okay.
I'm going to still say yes.
By Monday, we have an answer, and you're heavily leaning toward yes, he's playing again.
Well, I've said it. I'm starting to waver, but I'm not going to go away. I find it hard to believe he's going to put the Eagles in that position. So ultimately, I think they're going to get an answer. They might already have that answer. But yeah, I think we'll figure it out. And there's going to be a lot of stuff. Adam Thielen cut on the market.
So the
Chuck
Eagles
Fletcher
could sign
fired.
him because they wouldn't
Get
have
a
to
little
work.
Flyers. Chuck Fletcher fired. Make the
pick.
Flyers fans.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So big name, another big name, but he's going to cost too much money. So I'm going to go #no. It's #no season for all the Eagles fans who recognize the big names. #no.
We'll try and get a big name guest for you on Monday too, but we'll also have some Eagle guys on because free agency kicks in and the Eagles are a big player. They might be a big loser, but that still makes them a big player. Whole bunch of Eagle players will be talked a lot around the league, and we'll be here to talk about it with you on Birds 365 in 2 and 2 days, that is.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.